Bruce, you must have something really good too.
Of course I do. It's Bruce Danielson, and I guess I'm here to entertain you too.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, June 8th, Sioux Falls City Council meeting. Thanks for joining us tonight. Denise, we'll go ahead and get started by reading our roll, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Here.
Brecky?
Here.
Erickson?
Here.
Jensen?
Here.
Kylie? Neitzert?
Here.
Selberg?
Here.
Sale?
Here. All right, here to give our invocation tonight is Dorothy Terhorst. Dorothy is with the Direct Line Prayer Center. So Dorothy, thanks for being here. I'd ask that you stand for the invocation and then remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight with burdens and the weariness of the day. Before this meeting begins, we ask that you give each one of us peace of mind, body, and soul. Thank you, Lord, that you tend your flock like a shepherd, that you gather each one of us in your arms and carry us close to your heart, and that you gently lead those who have children. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. O Lord, the decisions that have to be made tonight may be difficult. Help everyone here to remember that because of your great love for them and for this city, we can trust you to help Mayor Tenhaken and Council members Janet Brecky, Christine Erickson, Alex Jensen, Rick Kiley, Greg Neitzert, Marshall Selberg, Kurt Sohl, Pat Starr, and all of the guests who are here tonight, for your compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. You, O Lord, are enough for each one of them. When they may feel that they're losing their footing, may your unfailing love support them and hold them up. When anxiety is great within them, may your consolation bring them joy. For every city is built by people, but God is the builder of everything. Thank you, God, that you have a beautiful plan for Sioux Falls. We ask you to reveal more of your plan for this city tonight. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. May the fire of our devotion light their way. May the footprints that we leave lead them to believe, and the lives we live inspire them to obey. Oh, may all who come behind us find us faithful. And now we invite you, Holy Spirit, to fill this chamber with your presence, and may the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, guard their hearts and their minds in Christ Jesus. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you, Dorothy, for being here tonight, leading us in the invocation. We'll move on to item 4, which is our consent agenda. Look for any changes or a motion there.
Move approval. Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen. Is there any discussion on that? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Move to item 13, which is our regular agenda approval. Look for a motion there, please.
Move approval. Second, Jensen.
All right, motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen to approve. Any discussion on the regular agenda here? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote on that, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Neitzert?
Yes.
Selberg?
Yes.
Sale?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Before we continue on with our regular agenda, just want to review public input for our agenda items tonight. For regular agenda items, comments are limited to 3 minutes unless the item is being presented for final adoption, in which case public input is limited to 5 minutes. For all regular agenda items, comments are limited to the agenda item under consideration at that time only. During general public input at the end of the meeting, comments will be limited to no more than 3 minutes per person. So with that being said, we'll move on to our next item, item 14.
Second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising Title VII Traffic Code and Chapter 95 Parks and Recreation to provide for the definition of motorized foot scooter and establishing a new Chapter 125 motorized foot scooters. Sponsors, Council Members Jensen and Erickson.
Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As we looked at the ordinance over the past, well, since last November, and as we're going to continue to move forward and seek input, we're going to maybe pump the brakes a little bit and withdraw this item here tonight and work with other stakeholders that we didn't know we should have at the time. So it was a great learning experience, and one of those times where, hey, you know what, it's good to pump the brakes, maybe work with state law, as state law doesn't allow electric scooters on the streets. So if there's a way that we can work with our other partners throughout the state and our other stakeholders in downtown Sioux Falls and our biking community, I think that there can be a great finish to this. It's just not going to be right now. So, Councilor Erickson and I will be withdrawing this here tonight to go back to the drawing board and work on it. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Councilor. Anyone from the public who would like to speak on this item tonight? All right. Then that being said, look for a motion to that effect, Councilor Jensen.
So moved. Thank you.
All right. Motion to withdraw by Councilor Jensen. We have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Erickson. Discussion amongst the council on the motion to withdraw this item. All right, hearing none, let's take a vote on that, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 7-0, so we'll move to item 15, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, implementing a temporary ordinance regarding the issuance of local medical cannabis establishment permits and/or licenses. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, June 15th, 2021. Sponsor, Mayor.
All right, City Attorney Koistra is going to present this item for us this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Clerk Greco. Tonight before you is the basically the spreadsheet for those keeping track that these are the slides taken from the working session that we had last week. And in front of the council tonight is one of 3 options that were presented to the council at that time. This one, paragraph 2, basically provides that the city would, in the event that they pass this ordinance, basically be awaiting the state's promulgation of rules related to medical cannabis. And upon receiving draft regulations from the state, implement substantive ordinances related to the same prior to or upon the effective date of the state's rules becoming effective. So with that, if you can go to the next slide, please, and hit it one more time. So this is the operative language for the ordinance tonight on first reading. This relates to essentially not accepting applications for medical cannabis establishments unless and until such regulations are promulgated. There's been a lot of discussion, both in this body and outside of it, related to the impacts that this has on personal use. As I think the council is aware, this is distinct from that as it relates to the 4 primary establishments that exist. So with that, and just in bearing in mind the working session we had last week, I'm open to any questions. And Sam Trebelcock, I believe, is here as well for any zoning related questions.
All right, thank you. Stacy. All right, anyone from the public here to speak on item 15 tonight? Come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, City Attorney. I really commend the work that you've done on the presentation and, leading the charge on this, and same with you, Councilor Neitzert. I know you've been doing a lot of research, and thankful for all of your time. As I've gotten to know some of you talking about this topic, it's an industry I've been in for 10 years. Moved back home, which is Sioux Falls, this year just to be part of this. And I'm very eager to show what a responsible cannabis business looks like and how we give back to the community. So I'm really neutral on this ordinance. It's up to you to decide if you really need this moratorium. I'm inclined to say you don't, so I guess maybe I'm not so neutral, but state law, goes into effect July 1st. I can't start a business regardless until state licenses come. To me, this ordinance just makes that the official policy of the city, but tangibly, I don't think it makes a big difference. What I think would make a big difference is to really get the sleeves rolled up and working on a more official ordinance. That's something we'll work with going forward. So I actually just emailed you all a version that I've been working on with commissioners at Minnehaha and Lincoln County, and hope to work with you on, and would like to see something in that direction move forward as soon as possible. But really, that's up to you. I know you have a big workload, a lot of other issues, but I'm here to help. That specific draft I just sent you is an evolution that various states' attorneys have worked on from other counties. I wasn't the chief architect of it. I did put my final touches on it. Just kind of some things I thought that needed improvement, but 90% of that language is coming from a draft out of Lincoln County that passed first reading this morning. So I guess my main message is that, yes, the Municipal League has given you a tool to rely on if you're not ready to implement something more comprehensive right now. But I am finding probably 5 or 6 other municipalities around the state are moving quickly. And I just don't want to see Sioux Falls, which should be the business leader in this state, fall behind, our neighbors south of us. I'm excited for Lincoln County too. That's why I was there this morning. But ultimately, I really want to see Sioux Falls, not drag this out any longer than we need to. I think you all would agree that once you get something on the books, it'll be nice to just have it done with and let us all move forward. Whether you are for or against the issue, we've all accepted that it's law. And so Sioux Falls has to do something about it. So as you look through that draft, I just have 20 seconds just to summarize. It really looks similar to alcohol licensing, but with a medical tone. I think it's a lot of common sense stuff. Security, staff requirements, background checks, everything you'd expect, I think, for a common sense licensing approach. And I'm out of time. So please follow up with me if you have any questions, and I hope to talk to you more about that.
Thank you. Could you state your name for the record?
Yes, I'm sorry. Emmett Rice Stroffer of Sioux Falls, 1905 South 7th Avenue.
Thanks, Emmett.
Thank you.
Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? Come on up. Good evening, sir.
Dennis Haugen, Sioux Falls. When I pose a question, I'm not meaning for you to answer it. I'm meaning for some people that were in the audience last week to answer it. I felt they were extremely abusive on whether or not you should just do something right away. I'm way behind on this and I don't understand it. But I tried to read through the whole Addendum A, and the first thought to me was it's a complex question. Kind of like, have you stopped beating your wife? And I really felt that medical marijuana should be its own question. Recreational marijuana should be another question. And I'm really confused because I see this product. I went and bought some CBD. Is that medical? And, well, those people aren't here tonight. Is that medical or not? And who's regulating this? I bought this at Lewis Drug. And my simple understanding is CBD is medical. And it seems like it's already readily available. Must be legal, or a big drugstore wouldn't have it. Then you go on the other side of the issue. My understanding it's THC that's in what you call recreational marijuana. And already there's all kinds of companies, all kinds of jobs that you're subject to random tests if you caught with it in your system. And I understand that, this is my simple understanding, that it takes at least 30 days to get it out of your system. So what impact does this have on the economy? Because there are people out there that are trained and skilled to a level, but they don't work at that level because they can't. In fact, you could probably only really take this stuff so many times a year, or you're not working at all. And how many people can be off work for 30 days before they can go back to work, and how many people will do it? I'm kind of comfortable with that law. It's for pilots, heavy machinery, all kinds of dangerous equipment that can hurt people if you're sleeping at the job. Anyway, I'm in no hurry, and I was here to I really felt they were rude to you last week.
Thank you, Dennis. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight, please come on up. Good evening.
Good evening, guys. Thanks for having me again. My name is Sarah Koob, and I live here in Sioux Falls. I'm just asking you guys to not touch this at all. I'd rather have you guys do nothing than to add a bunch of regulations that are going to push us out longer. Propagation, micropropagation, and cloning, all of that stuff takes a lot of time. To grow this plant, it takes up to 90 to 100 days in some strands, okay? If we're not going to start this until October, and that's if nothing strange happens between now and July 1st, we could be looking at not having marijuana available in this state until at least 2022. And to me, that just seems so long. I'm asking you guys that if you guys don't feel you can manage it appropriately, then just don't touch it at all. I'm seeing that we have different bills coming out of Turner. We've got different bills coming out of Lincoln. They all do not have the same language. And Sioux Falls is the city I think of when I think of South Dakota, okay? And if we're not spearheading this, I don't know where we're going to go. So I'm asking you guys to, leave it alone if you guys aren't going to, be a leader with it. And just think about how long it takes to grow a plant. Because that's how long we're talking, even if, miraculously the Supreme Court says no to rec here in the next 2 weeks. But I think there's a bigger probability that they're not going to say no, that they're going to say, yay, you get rec, now your medicinal law, all that codified means nothing. Now we've got to get recreational in there. And it's going to change everything. And then if they do that, then October 29th is no longer good. And then we're talking into 2022 again. And I'm just sitting here going, please, there are people who really depend on this medication. When I don't have it, I get thinner and thinner. You guys are going to see me getting thinner and thinner. So I'm asking, please, if you guys aren't going to touch it, if you guys aren't going to take it serious, then just don't touch it at all. But thank you very much, guys. I appreciate your hard work.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Anyone else here to speak on this topic tonight? All right, seeing no other public input, let's move to questions that you'd have for the city attorney, and then we can look for motion. Questions on this item? Councilor Starr, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Attorney. My question, what are we trying to preserve? The option to do nothing seems like the way to go. What does this preserve or do for the city by passing this ordinance?
Well, the way I would summarize it is a phrase I've used over the years of my practice, which is clear agreements make long friendships. And so what the public, what I believe is in the best interest of the public is clarity regarding how this law is going to work at the state level and at the local level. And there are unknowns. And even one of our commenters there noted the differences that are being rolled out in different communities. And each community has a certain amount of jurisdiction and authority to determine what it looks like within the boundary, either of their community or the county. So they're going to look different. But when you look at the law and how it itemizes the responsibilities and the areas that are occupied by the state, there's a lot of unknowns regarding what that will look like. And so the philosophy that's coming out of other communities that are bringing a greater body of laws, would be say, well, we'll amend those as we go. So there's no way around the fact that everybody is awaiting the regulations provided by the state. So in the interest, like we touched on in the working session, of avoiding things like investor expectations or reliance from the community in the absence of actions, that's why this is being brought forward the way it is. And I'll give you an example, because the city has a licensing office, and were July 1st to come and the city takes no action, there is no clarity as to what the licensing office would do with the receipt of an application. So there are just a lot of things as we await the state's promulgations of regulations, and that it makes it difficult, and you're accepting risk as far as what they're going to say and what they're not. And so you can't eliminate the risk of amendment. And so per the South Dakota Municipal League and their proposed legislation, which has been slightly modified for our purposes, it gives that clarity to say, let's take the opportunity to see what the state does. None of this affects individual use or the written certifications for access to medical marijuana. This relates to establishments, and so that's basically the purpose behind this language, and why there's a very strong argument that it's preferable to doing nothing, especially when you consider the duty to the public in that regard. And I would just note, if you would look at 3420G-72 and the subparagraphs, it itemizes all the areas that the state occupies. And it's everything from oversight requirements, record keeping, security, health and safety regulations, the standards for manufacturing, transportation, employment, and training requirements. There's so many broad things that upon receiving drafts, the city is better informed and leadership is better informed as to what a body of ordinances should look like.
One more I'm sorry, Mr.
Go ahead.
One more question that I had is, how does this compare to what Lincoln and Minnehaha County have passed?
It's a good question. Both are on first reading. Lincoln County went with a broader body of ordinances, which I won't get into. And then Minnehaha County passed something nearly identical to this. A key distinction is that they actually on first reading have a provision in there that would essentially extend this ordinance 60 days past the state's promulgation of regulations, whereas ours does not contain that, but otherwise they're the same.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for the city attorney on this item? Councilor Brecky, go ahead.
I'm trying to understand. I kind of feel like I'm in the dark on this situation. We had, a working session where we discussed it, and then there's a task force now been appointed. What are we expecting that task force to do? And again, I'm just needing a clearer understanding of why we're waiting to do our part, since it's such a small little piece of this bigger puzzle. I mean, all we really are responsible for is the location and the licensure process. So I'm just, the fact that the state has a big burden and a heavy sled to pull in this, our piece seems pretty simple. And I'm just wondering, again, what is our plan? What is our plan going forward? Is this committee going to meet? Is this moratorium going to be here until the committee meets and proposes something in the interim? Or are we going to wait the entire gamut until the state does this whole big job that they've got in front of them when we've got just a small job in front of us?
Mm-hmm. Well, there are a lot of things you touched on there, and so I'll try to address all of them. When it comes to doing our part, I guess what I would explain to you is that they're just taking one particular approach, and I'm not sure what your definition of this would be doing our part and this is not doing our part. As I touched on, there's a deliberate purpose behind the language of this ordinance, is to provide that clarity. When it comes to doing a small part of this, for the people in our community that have an interest in this, I would argue it's not a small part. It's a large part for business owners and entrepreneurs who are interested in starting a business here, whether it be a dispensary or a cultivation or manufacturing or testing. You know, it's kind of their everything if they're looking to do business here in Sioux Falls. And so when people argue, and I've heard the arguments publicly regarding the will of the voters and why aren't we doing this and doing that, you know, the voters adopted a mechanism for all of these things that we're doing. And so picking this path, which is awaiting the state's promulgation of regulations, as opposed to coming forward with a greater body without knowing, isn't any type of abdication of anybody's responsibility. It's taking a path that that many believe to be in the best interests of the community, not unlike Minnehaha County and what they're doing, which is essentially the same approach. I don't know if I touched on all your questions or comments.
You know, maybe it was a long-winded question, but maybe I can just ask it more shortly, more briefly. Really, all we have to do is set up a licensing procedure and then figure out where we're going to allow these places to be located, right? That's the part that was left to the cities.
Well, it's more complex than that. And so when you look at the context, and because context is king, there are a number of things related to the business environment and the regulatory environment that when making a decision on the substance of what the future of Sioux Falls looks like in the medical cannabis business, that there is a certain prudence to being aware of what that environment is. And again, the alternative, as I indicated in my first slide, is you can come forward with that body of laws, which no one within city leadership has, or you can take this option, which is let's give the state an opportunity to tell us where they are, even via drafts, as opposed to even final regulations, or you can do nothing and leave a lot of questions. Again, you can't eliminate questions in any scenario, and in some respects, there's not a risk-free way to proceed. But if the argument is that we should do nothing because that's a more viable alternative to providing this, that's one that the council can discuss and debate. But from my perspective, you know, this is an option that's been discussed, that's been brought forward, that's being broadly used across the state. And so it's one that, in many respects, is prudent and from many people's perspectives in the best interest of the residents of the community, both those who are engaged in this process and interested in the outcome and those who aren't.
Okay, so then explain to me, and maybe this is a question for Greg, my fellow council member, what is this task force going to be doing in the interim? This is a task force between Lincoln County, Minnehaha County, and the city. What's their task? And how does that fit together with what we ultimately are going to do?
Well, it's developing, but I would say there are primarily two main responsibilities. One is the substance, like what is Lincoln County choosing to do, you know, and what is Minnehaha County choosing to do. We have some interim awareness or initial awareness as to what that is, but that dialogue is to, you know, to be able to have that discussion in a public venue, right? The second part of that is what I would describe as almost kind of a liaison role, which is ensuring communication between these two counties in which the city of Sioux Falls sits, to ensure that in the best interest of those who live in all three entities, that there is that coordination in a public fashion and in a way I believe that allows for public input to the leaders that have been appointed to that body.
So are they going to be drafting a ordinance jointly that we might later adopt? Are they going to be working on that?
They again can address the merits of it, but there wouldn't be any ordinance necessarily. Some of that they're gonna have to define when they first meet, on June 23rd. But as they come together, there are gonna be independent decisions in all three entities as to which direction they're going. And we can see where that is with Lincoln County, but again, Minnehaha and, what's proposed for the city are basically to allow the state some time to give some guidance. So they're not a sovereign body, by the intent, as you've seen in the conversations that everyone else has also heard, is that they intend to make recommendations to their leadership bodies as to what they believe to be in the best interests from their particular roles. That being said, at the end of the day, the decisions will be made in each of the commissions and the council.
I'm just having trouble understanding your lengthy answers. I just want to know, are they going to be making recommendations as to what the application process is going to be and where we're going to locate them in the cities and county, in the city and counties?
The short answer is that's to be determined by the task force. I mean, you're aware, and the public was given the same notice regarding what their role would be, and it would be to make those recommendations. Okay, so when they get together and they have their meeting and you're able to attend and you're able to provide your own input as what you'd like to see, they're gonna have to determine what that task force, what their specific roles are. What we know is that they're charged with making a recommendation, and in the process, they're gonna be collaborating with one another about what those particular task force members believe to be in the best interest of their respective entities, and what further work they believe needs to be done. And so I think you're asking a lot of questions that remain to be determined.
I'm just trying to understand the scope of the task.
Well, and I understand you're struggling with that, counselor, and I'm trying to help you understand. But at some point, the information that's been provided about the task force is readily available as to their role and what they're charged with, which is to make a recommendation back to their individual bodies.
But I'm trying to understand,
Any other questions for city attorney on this? All right, let's get a motion. We'll look for some discussion if there's any then. The motion would be to set a date of second reading for this item on Tuesday, June 15.
So moved, Nitzert. Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Nitzert, seconded by Sale on this. All right, discussion on the council, comments on that motion. Councilor Nitzert, go ahead.
Just a few overarching comments. Yes, in the full body of the state law, we have limited authority. I will tell you, though, that I would very much caution against oversimplifying that this is an easy thing to do. This is an entirely new industry entering South Dakota, which essentially is, right or wrong, creating essentially an end run around the normal medical approval process because it's illegal under federal law. So a dispensary is not a pharmacy. They are not equivalent. All of these other things are new to us. There's benefits for certain people with conditions, but there are significant consequences to doing these things too, and that's why you have to be very thoughtful about what your regulations are going to be, not the least of which is keeping it out of the hands of young people and out of their view, because it can have significant long-term consequences. So it's a serious exercise. And I will also mention that one of the agreements in the Cole Memorandum is that states and local governments would implement strong and effective controls to make sure that it gets to the people that it purports to, and it doesn't get in the hands of people that it shouldn't. And so we need to be thoughtful about that. I think at the first meeting is where we would establish what our scope is. I think the obvious would be coming up with what the proposed joint regulations could be, because we both have to vote on them. Maybe the other thing would be, I don't want anybody to be under the impression that you pass this and then you just stand back and wait. I think we'd be getting to work on this. That would be without question. I think in the best case scenario, you get something drafted, you have it ready, the draft regulations come out from the state, and there's a whole set of timelines that they have to hit, which should run about 60 days, something like that. You take their regulations, which tells you exactly what these things are going to look like, and then you can look and make sure that what you've done conforms to what they did. They're not overruling you on anything, and having those specific regulations also helps you understand what you're even regulating, because right now they're kind of a black box. We don't know all the very specific regulations, so that would be helpful. And you check that, make sure it's in harmony, you bring that forward, you get that passed and enforced on the day or before the state regulations are enforced, so that on the day that they're enforced, somebody can walk into the city office and they can get their permit. And maybe the other thing I would note is that in the other local jurisdictions, like for example, Lincoln County, I believe that's actually an emergency or a temporary ordinance they're calling it. So and there's not unanimity on that board, but the approach that they're taking is let's pass something, and then if regulations come out that change something, then we'll just go back and amend it. And I would just submit that that's perfectly valid. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily, but it doesn't speed up anybody in the county's ability to get a permit or start a business. And in fact, it may give them some reliance on some regulation that they think might be what's the rules are going to be, and then maybe they get changed on them in 30 days. And I would submit that that may not be fair to somebody who wants to make an investment. So just leave it at that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Counselor. Other discussion amongst the council on this item? Counselor Brecky?
The reason for my questioning is I was trying to understand, I thought the purpose of this task force was to do this exact thing. I think all of a sudden we have a task force, and and then I see this on the agenda for the first time today. I mean, it's like, whoa, I didn't know this was coming down. I thought the task force was going to recommend jointly a process or a path forward. And the task force hasn't met, and we're in the place where we've got three choices, but we're choosing moratorium. I would have liked that group, that body, to get together and recommend this to me, or recommend one, we sit, or recommend that we go with a skeletal regulation that we can modify later. And so, I won't be supporting this tonight because I think we're getting the cart before the horse. We have a task force. We've given it a task. We have time before July 1st to chart a course, a joint course. And, Lincoln's doing something, Minnehaha's doing something, we're doing something. If the purpose of that was to have us work together jointly, then I would like to have a recommendation from them before we move forward, on a moratorium.
Any other discussion, council, on this item? Counselor Starr?
Or go ahead, because I think Councilor Neitzer may want to answer.
Go ahead, Counselor Neitzer.
I appreciate that. I guess the only thing I would maybe just clarify is that with the timeline that we have, this being an emergency ordinance, this would be in force by July 1st. If we wait for the task force to meet, whatever we bring forward, we can't get into effect by July 1st, and you therefore have now created that problem where what is a license office supposed to tell somebody between July 1st and the adoption of an ordinance? And every local government, including the counties passing other things, are all struggling with this conundrum of this July 1st through October 29th gap. And again, even those that might pass a quote-unquote ordinance or a licensing process can't do anything with it anyway, because the state won't even accept the application because it doesn't even exist yet. So they can pass something, but it's essentially just sitting on paper. So thanks.
Counselor Starr?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm concerned that we're a little bit backwards as well. We're missing the point of what needs to be accomplished. The committee needs to meet. We need to be very active member and participant in the rulemaking authority that the Board of Health is going to do. The state, or this mythical body, is us. And the state takes our input, other cities' input, and we need to be there. And we're months down the road of this passing, and we don't know what we want as a city. We don't know how to make recommendations to the governing board that's going to make the rulemaking authority. We need to be involved in the process of making the rules that's going to affect us as a city, rather than sitting back and saying, you know, we need to say that's too restrictive or it's not restrictive enough. It's not going to work for the state's largest city. But at this point, we don't have any idea how we want it to operate, how we would move forward, and we're watching the process rather than driving the process. And that puts us as the state's largest city in the backseat rather than the driver's seat. And this makes us comfortable, and it preserves everything, and we can sit back and watch. I've never seen Sioux Falls be a sit in the backseat and watch things happen and let things develop. We need to be in peer. We need to be making that adjustment. We need to be making what works for our community. And I think each one of us on the dais would take this in a little bit of a different direction, but we haven't come together as a group to decide what we want. I don't know how we have a joint task force with 2 other government agencies when we send our 2 representatives and we haven't told them what we wanted or how we want it to work. And I get that we've got to work this out, but this isn't entirely new. It's happened in other states. The history's there. It's new to us, but it's basic leadership. It's someone saying, this is what we want for the city of Sioux Falls. This is how we want this process to work, and we need to move forward with that. Again, we're moving forward without a plan. We've had a presentation to us. We haven't had a presentation of what we want as the elected representatives of the city of Sioux Falls.
All right, I think we're ready to take a vote on this item to set a date for second reading for Tuesday, June 15th. Let's take a roll, please.
Councilmember Starr,
No.
Brecky,
No.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 5-2. Move on to item 16, please.
First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by amending Chapter 30, City Council to establish the Regulatory Oversight Committee and reorganize the existing standing committees of the City Council. Recommendation, set a date of second reading for Tuesday, June 15, 2021. Sponsors, Council Members Erickson and Sale.
Councilor Erickson,
Mr.
are
Mayor.
you going to speak to this? The floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I don't have a formal presentation. I've talked about this at our informational meeting a handful of times, as well as kind of bouncing this around throughout the council, just talking about truly how we can make our city council committees better. As you all know, we currently have 4 standing committees that each of us serve on, from land use, public services, operations, and fiscal committee. Audit is also one, but it is council and citizen. These committees, as you all know, have rarely met over the last several years, so we worked hard to make them relevant for this council and for future councils. Last year, I brought forward an ordinance approved by the council to clarify and provide purpose to the committee's roles. I continue to work with councilors to find opportunities to make these committees relevant, hence my proposal this evening. The ordinance establishes a new committee, the Regulatory Oversight Committee, or what we've determined ROC. The name is fairly straightforward and will provide the City Council committee to review, study, recommend changes to regulation. Examples such as proposed updates to universal building codes, which are expected from building services later this year. The ordinance does remove land use committee and foresees its role in the zoning, etc., consolidate into ROC. To provide more clarity, the Public Services Committee was also revised to City Services Committee. There are no other changes to Operations or Fiscal Committee. The ordinance was included in your packet or on the agenda as well for you all to see. And really, this is just a way for us to just kind of continue to dive in and look at those policy decisions that we all make and work collaboratively alongside with the administration as well as the council. These meetings, as you know, are open to the public and will meet as an as needed basis. They also will be, if folks on the council are excited about this or not excited about this, you can ask to be appointed by council leadership, such as any of the other committees that we have done over the years. I myself love the policy and love kind of getting into the weeds of policy and making things better. for not just the city and good government, but also to make them simplified for our constituents in the community as well as other elected officials, so we know what is happening in our community. That's all I got for you today. I'd ask for your positive approval of this and look forward to getting this committee kind of off the ground.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to item 16 here tonight? All right, Counselors, let's get a motion on the floor. We can move into discussion. That motion will be to set a date of second reading for Tuesday, June 15.
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Erickson, seconded by Sale on this item. Discussion amongst the council here on this item. Counselor Brecky.
I've got two problems with the proposed ordinance. One is I do think that this ordinance, should have went through the Operations Committee, like the previous ordinance did, the one that that Councilmember Erickson brought last year. And the reason I think it should go through the Council Committee is because I do have input and strong feelings about that, and I would like to be able to collaborate and share my ideas about council structure with that committee, since that is that committee's job, to analyze our procedures and to make recommendations. And I would like an opportunity to influence my fellow council members on that committee before it comes up for a first reading. One of my very first meetings, I attended the Operations Committee meeting, and I expressed frustration with our committee system because I did some research and found out that the 3 committees that we have were put into place pursuant to a recommendation by the city clerk at the time, and it was done to model the state legislature. And that's how they run legislation through separate committees. It helps keep them organized. Well, it was pretty clear because we had so many years of cancellations of these committee meetings that it wasn't working for us. And after, conferring with the individual who recommended it to the council, she agreed with me that it never really worked because we don't deal with the volume of legislation. The state legislators are dealing with hundreds of bills that they're trying to get through in a couple month period. And so the committees were never really activated, and they never really served that purpose. And so from that point forward, I began trying to talk to my fellow council members about a better structure for us, or a different kind of structure. And for me, the structure I'd like to see us consider, or at least have a dialogue about, is just having ad hoc committees as issues come up. Because standing committees, again, in the past they haven't worked because the people that have a passion don't always get appointed to the committee they have a passion for. And then there's never been any issues assigned to the committees, and so they've never really tackled anything. I would love to see if, and the passions change. When, these, now all of a sudden we're getting rid of the Public Services Committee, and we're rolling it into, or what we're turning it. I don't know what all we're doing here. Again, because I really didn't have a chance to digest all this. I didn't know the momentum behind it, and it hasn't come through the committee. But we're changing these committees around. We're renaming them. We're going to have different committees. And I understand that the intent is to activate it, but I would truly like the council to consider, when you just have an ad hoc committee, and then you pass it by a resolution. If 2 members, for example, want to work on regulatory, deregulation, some deregulatory issues, then they say, hey, we would like to work on this. We'd like to have anybody else on the council work with us that wants to. We'd like to have a couple citizens. Again, we'll put together a resolution. Would you pass that? And we'll be off and running. That would allow council members to work their passions and be consistent with the time restrictions we have. For the last year, I was appointed to the Land Use Committee. I don't have an interest in the Land Use Committee, and no, it never met. And if it did, I'm not the one to drag that issue forward because it's not a passion of mine. I don't want to spend my time on that. I want to spend my time on things that I'm better at. And so if we would do ad hoc committees, and again, we could roll with the flow better, just like, with this marijuana committee, we could say who wants to work on marijuana. People that have the passion raise their hand. if they want citizen members or whatever on it, or, you know, other members on it, we pass a resolution validating them, off they run, they report back and do the legwork, and it allows people to spend their time, that limited time that we have, and we all complain about the extra hours that this job takes, on the things that we're passionate about. So one of the things I'm passionate about is a good process, and I think this is just a change in process that may suit this particular council, but it may not suit the councils of the future, because they may have different passions, and it might not be deregulation. So having a regulatory committee, you know, might be my feeling about the land use committee. No, I'm not interested in that. And I'm, you know, but what if, you know, so I am interested in the regulatory committee, but, you know, maybe I won't get appointed to that. So I won't be allowed to be on it. So that's my concern. I think we should send this back for a recommendation to the operations committee. We should roll up our sleeves, check out some other councils and see what kind of structures they have to help them have a sieve, you know, for the issues, and effectively utilize their time and their passions in a way that really allows them to enjoy the job and to be productive for the city.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Counselor Sale, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the reasons I agreed to sign on to this is I agree with Counselor Brecky that the current committee structure hasn't been worked, but the amount of workload that comes in front of the council today is more than, it keeps increasing year after year after year. And I would like to see this council make the best utilization of the time. So if this passes, then at that time, Councilor Jensen being the vice chair and myself, we making committee appointments, and we will take into consideration who has an interest in what area. But at the end of the day, we all don't get to choose to work on the things that we only like. Sometimes you have to work on the things that you don't like. So I think this is an attempt. If it does not work, then next year, the next council can restructure the way that they would like to see it done. So I would ask that you pass this and allow Councilor Jensen and I to make the committee appointments and make the committee a place that it would be the first stop for a lot of the things that come in front of us. No committee can stop legislate or stop any ordinance. If a city council member wants to bring it, there is no requirement that it goes to committee first. So I would appreciate if you would vote for this and we can go.
All right, thank you, Counselor. Counselors, other discussion on this item? All right, let's then take a vote on the motion to approve this resolution.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
No?
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 6-1. We'll move on to item 18.
Item 17,
Is item 17. My apologies, you're right.
resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, annexation 014390-2021, McConaughey Edition, private applicants, Aaron Norman, care of Barbara McConaughey.
Good evening, Jeff.
Good evening. Thank you very much. We have two annexations this evening. Both are petitioned annexations from the property owners. This one is in the northwest part of Sioux Falls. It is approximately 40 acres just west of Marion Road. Its family owns that whole 160 acres. They originally did the 40 acres for McGovern School and the Fire Station 11. So it's in an area for planned annexation. We have infrastructure there. Staff recommends the annexation.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Anyone from the public who would like to speak to this item tonight? All right, councilors, any questions for Jeff on item 17?
Move approval.
Okay.
Second, Jensen.
Motion by Selberg, seconded by Jensen to approve item 17. Any discussion here, council? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Nitzert,
Yes.
Selberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. Now we're on to item 18.
A resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, annexation 014358-2021, Van Beeks Edition, Private applicants, Allen Development, care of Van Beek family.
This is in the northeast district. I'm kind of smirking, but you could claim it's in the southeast district depending on what you want to claim it, because you can see it kind of jogs over there on the east side of town. So this is, again, a family petition. It's from the Van Beek property and their family trust. It's just south of 10th Street and east of 6 Mile Road. It's another 40-acre parcel. Both of these are generally set for residential construction. It also is a planned urban development, and you can see that just about everything around that area is already set. This is just a remnant parcel.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Anyone from the public here to speak to this item tonight? All right, councilors, any questions for Jeff on this annexation? All right, hearing none, look for a motion, please.
Move approval, Jensen.
Second, Sale.
All right, motion by Jensen, seconded by Councilor Sale to approve item 18. Any discussion on it? All right, let's take a vote, please.
Councilmember Starr,
Yes.
Brecky,
Yes.
Erickson,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Neitzert,
Yes.
Sailberg,
Yes.
Sale.
Yes.
All right, that item passes 7-0. Our next item, please.
Item 19, notice of transfer of appropriations on memorandum dated May 31st, 2021.
All right, councilors, any new business that you have for the body tonight? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to public input. Just a reminder, input during this portion will last 3 minutes per person. So anybody for public input can come up at this time. Good evening.
Good evening. Scott Harrisman, Sioux Falls. I was watching the meeting tonight and won't comment on any of the specifics, but there's something I always think about when I watch governments, and one of them is there's 3 rules that are really easy to apply, and if you apply these rules to what you're doing, you're probably going to be successful. That's the KISS theory, which means keep it simple, stupid, don't do dumb things. Number 2 is transparency and openness. That is always should be number 1. You should be upfront and open with the public and work with the public with things. And of course, the last one is common sense. There was 2 ordinances tonight that had no common sense in them. Number 1, you broke the openness rule. You didn't come to the public. You didn't come out and talk to the public. One of them, actually, I kind of support, but since you didn't come and talk to the public about it first, it was crap and it had to be withdrawn. So you broke the openness rule. You also broke the common sense rule on that one. Didn't make any sense at all. And it wasn't simple and it was stupid. I don't understand why it is so hard to govern, and why we fight transparency tooth and nail in this city government. It's horrible. We move public input to the end. We shorten it to 3 minutes. We shorten the meeting time for the informational. So we can't get any information out there. You know, last I checked, I thought this was a democracy. I didn't know we were running an authoritarian nation here in Sioux Falls. You know, it's funny, you're talking about one of the ordinances tonight, and you were talking about how, well, we got to do what the state does. When has that ever stopped you before? I said this a few months back. I have never, ever seen a community, I've been following local politics and South Dakota politics for over 20 years, and I have never seen a local entity government, county commission, city council, you know, whatever, ever get in trouble for being too open. Ever. I've seen a lot of them get in trouble for not being open. Open the books. What are we afraid of? Oh, if the public knows too much, you know, they're going to be dangerous. Actually, you save taxpayers a lot of money when you're open. So tonight, you guys proved once again that not applying simple rules, it was a crap meeting.
All right, thank you. Come on up, sir.
Dennis Haugen, Sioux Falls. I don't think, I have to take issue with this gentleman that just spoke. I don't think he has any clue. For one thing, I always look at end results, and as you know, I've been a few places. And Sioux Falls is very well run. What do you mean about openness? Anybody can come here and talk. Probably be better if they learn how to have a little more sense about it, not be so abusive in his talk. But this guy before you, what did he say? Nothing. Absolutely nothing that had any substance or any relationship to anything. He just wanted to blow off gas or something, I guess. Anyway, you've done a very good job. When I drive the streets of Sioux Falls, very good job. Go drive the streets of Seattle. Go drive the streets of Los Angeles. Go drive the streets of San Francisco. Go to Chicago. New York. What other cities? Baltimore? Well, he needs to go there. You come back to Sioux Falls and you'll be really amazed and appreciate the results you see out there and how well it is run. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Anyone else for general public input tonight? Come on up, sir. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Cody Engel. I'm here as the Vice President of Sioux Falls Pride. And as most people know, June is celebrated as Pride Month across the United States. I just wanted to come and read a proclamation that Mayor Tanakin signed for Pride Month. Whereas in 2021, more than 11 million Americans openly identify as LGBTQ, including over 30,000 South Dakotans. Whereas June is designated International Gay Pride Month, honoring the history and achievements of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, two-spirit community, and all who identify as LGBTQIA+. Whereas, according to the Center for American Progress, a quarter of LGBTQ individuals still experience discrimination in some form every year. Whereas, more than a third of LGBTQ high school and college students continue to experience discrimination that negatively affect their ability to learn and to feel accepted. Whereas the friends, family members, supporters, and members of the LGBTQ community know their own hopes, their own dreams, and their own voices cannot be silenced by hatred and bigotry. Whereas Sioux Falls Pride here in Sioux Falls is mission-bound to bettering the lives and liberties of the LGBTQ residents and families of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and the surrounding area. Now, therefore, I, Paul Tanakin, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim June as Pride Month in Sioux Falls. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for signing the proclamation, and thank you, Councilmember Pastar, for coming to the festival and being able to read it as well. We appreciate it as Sioux Falls Pride.
All right, thanks, Cody. Anyone else here to speak tonight? All right, seeing no more public input, I just need a motion to adjourn us out, please.
So moved.
Jensen.
All right.
Brecky.
Seconded by Brecky. Motion by Jensen, second by Brecky. We'll have to take a roll call vote for that, please.
Councilmember Starr?
Yes.
Brecky?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Jensen?
Yes.
Nitzert?
Yes.
Selberg? Sale?
Yes.
All right, that passes 7-0. We're adjourned. Have a good night, everyone.